Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of the Sixers Fast Break podcast with me, Nate, and Evan. This time, all three of us are there, but the Sixers are still waiting for that with Joel Embiid and Paul George both being ruled out for, tomorrow night's game against the Pistons. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot of good, a lot of bad. How are we feeling, people?
Yeah, I mean, it was good to get that first win off our back. It felt, I don't know, I felt we should have won that Toronto game, and we should have lost the Indiana game, so it all balanced out. But just good to finally break out that first win.
Yeah, it's always good to get your first win of the season. Just wish it came a little earlier.
Absolutely. Obviously, no, not without some drama. Joel Embiid getting fined from the sideline. That was from the benches. That was certainly something. Waving the towel. I loved it, but NBA did not see it the same way we all did.
Post-game technical fouls. Didn't know that was a thing.
What do you say?
Post-game technical fouls. Didn't know we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it, but clearly Adam Silver and the folks up at the NBA headquarters did not find it as funny as Sixers fans did. And what was the fine amount? Was it $50K or $100K?
It was $50K for the towel, but $100K for the Sixers, like not disclosing his injury properly.
That's what it was.
So
certainly an interesting start to his season. That indie game, though, a lot to go over there. Tyrese Maxey finally having that. He had a lot of those games with that Embiid last year. He just kind of almost randomly just pops off, drops. I believe it was 45, carrying the team on his back to, like you mentioned, Nate, the big first win of the year, getting that off your shoulders.
Yeah. Maxey, in all honesty, had a tough first two games before that Indiana game. And even for a majority of that Indiana game, he didn't look great. But he really picked it up in the second half, really turned it on, scored, I believe it was like 13 of the Sixers' 18 points in that overtime period. That's really what they need for him without Embiid, right, or George. But he came up flat in those first two games. It was good to see him get back on track.
And it was good to see him in the second half because he scored like 7 points, I think it was, in the first half and 38 in third, fourth, and overtime. So it was good to see him finally turn it up a notch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nate, you mentioned him starting off slow. That was something that was obviously a concern because we fell really flat in that Milwaukee game, and that Toronto game was something that you felt like we should have won despite being shorthanded. So to see him back at that form we saw him at last year, the most improved player, was a huge relief.
Yeah, Maxey came up especially flat in that first game against Milwaukee. I feel like he was owned completely by Gary Trent. Gary Trent played solid defense on Maxey the entire game, and really, Maxey couldn't find a way around him. Couldn't really find a way to get himself involved in that first game. Shot an abhorrent stat line. He was like 10 for 31 in that first game, and it's not really how you want to get off to the season.
Yeah, I remember not being able to catch that game, and I woke up and saw someone say that he shot Halloween, and I was just like, all right, it doesn't look like I missed much as is. So just, to see him back at that 45 points against Indianapolis in that crazy game, much better shooting, 14 for 32 this time around. So just, obviously we're going to need that for the rest of the season, whether Embiid and George are healthy or injured. So huge relief, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he shot 26% in that second game at Toronto, 2 for 12 from three. He's really got to step up bigger than that in these absences, right?
Absolutely, and obviously that Milwaukee game, obviously the Bucks, they're not looking exactly as good as a lot of people thought they'd be. They're, I believe, 1-2 or 0-3? They're 1-3 now on the season, which is an interesting start. The East as a whole looking a little bit interesting, but Joel Embiid and Paul George, to change the subjects a little bit. What we had thought back in our first episode, I believe this might have been the second. I don't remember at this point, but we had thought that this Detroit game was going to be the return game. They're out for the first three yesterday or 2 days ago. think it was 2 days ago, would have been the third against Indianapolis. But they've both been ruled out against Detroit, seemingly. I believe they've both been ruled out, yeah. So seemingly interesting decision there. But the fifth game maybe is where we finally get to see all three of them. It's starting to get, I don't know about you guys, just starting to get a little antsy to see them all on the court together.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised to see them both ruled out against Detroit. The Tobias homecoming, which makes me really worried because the game after that is Memphis. Now, they do have a big break in between the Wednesday game and the Saturday game. But if they don't play Memphis, I think it's I don't know if they're going to bring them back over that 3-game West Coast road trip that they have coming up after Memphis. So, curious to see if they come back on Memphis. I hope they do.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen George back. I mean, I kind of expected Embiid at this point, but George, they said what was just a hyperextension of the right knee.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it was. Surprised that it's taking this long for him to finally come back. And I mean, if he's not back Saturday, then I'm not sure what to believe.
Right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Evan. And Nate, you mentioned the road trip, but even past that, this schedule does not get much easier for the Sixers. It's the Grizzlies, and then it's the Suns, Clippers, and Lakers all on the road. Then you get an easier game against the Hornets. Then it's the Knicks at home, the Cavs at home, the Magic in Orlando, the Heat in Miami, then the Grizzlies again, and then you get an easier stretch to end out November. But it is not an easy month for the Sixers, and they're going to be tested a lot. And obviously, a lot of these games, I love Tyrese Maxey, but you're probably not going to be able to win with just Maxey. And the rest of them, especially with how they've looked in this first, just about a week now of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this November, typically in past years wouldn't be sort of a month to really care that much about, but now with the NBA Cup primarily taking up November, this is a month that the Sixers might want to care a little bit more about. But this is a month where they're going to have to try to find games for Embiid and George to sit out and take some rest days. Like, I think that Charlotte game is going to be a rest game for both of them. But again, if you think about what Embiid said earlier in the season, that he's not going to play any back-to-backs, that rules him out of either that New York or Cleveland game on November 12th and November 13th. And both those are big games against good Eastern Conference rivals. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think that the NBA Cup, it doesn't really matter in the long run. I don't really care. I don't think they care if we go far in the in-season tournaments. But especially not having Embiid for, he said he's not playing back-to-backs, so we're missing him for Cavs or Knicks, who he said, I believe in the first or second episode, those are the teams to beat. It's the Cavs, the Knicks, the Celtics. It's going to be tough beating teams like that if you're not having Embiid for that game. Can't rely on just Maxey.
And like you said, teams to beat. The Cavaliers have looked really good out of the gate, too. They're 4-0. The Knicks, not as much, but obviously give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll probably catch it up. And just all in all, a very, very just brutal schedule of November for the Sixers with the NBA Cup. You'd have to imagine, I've always had some skepticism with when Embiid said, no more back-to-backs. I don't know if he's just saying that, that's what he thinks, because Joel Embiid's obviously not a doctor, but he knows himself better than obviously we do. So I don't know if that is just something that he had speculated at the time and maybe just didn't get the memo that he probably shouldn't have said that to the press, whether it was true or false. But you'd have to imagine there'd be some exceptions. And I'm thinking maybe if the Sixers struggle here in these next 4 games you're looking at, or 5, well, I'm looking at the 4 in November here to start off November up to the 8th. If they lose 2 or 3 of those, you might imagine it could be trying not to fall too deep below 500 earlier in the season. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that is actually enforced throughout the season is what I'm trying to say here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in my opinion, I think they're going to be pretty tight with it, especially with how mysterious this injury has been so far. I think the back-to-backs is already a given. He's not going to play a single one this season unless it happens to be April or March and it's an absolute must-win to get a certain seeding. Then I think he may play, but I think as it stands, he's an automatic scratch for a back-to-back.
Yeah, I think that back-to-backs, they're not happening, but the whole point of Embiid not playing back-to-backs is to make him healthy enough to play for them in the playoffs. So sneaking in as an 8 seed, getting to the end-season tournament, and doing whatever, just making sure you get in the playoffs, that's the main goal here. So I think that not having Embiid for back-to-backs is a given, like Nate said. But it's all just obviously for the main goal, which is getting to the playoffs. Doesn't matter for a top 3 seed, because once we're in the playoffs, we can be deadly. Having a healthy Embiid, having a healthy George, having a healthy Maxey.
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned it there with the play-in tournament. You didn't see it as much last year, but the year before, obviously, it was kind of shown on full display how like play-in teams aren't just like kind of what the 7 seed for the NFL has been, and just almost an automatic out. A lot of good playoff runs from play-in teams, etc. last year, and the Sixers obviously put up a very good fight last year. Just got an unfortunate matchup with the Knicks, and obviously be interesting to see how that all plays out, seeding wise, with teams that are going to end up being good or better. It's just fun time in the NBA where you get to really look at teams that are overperforming, underperforming, just who's really going to be who this year, and obviously that'll change as the season progresses. But Evan, like you said, just the main thing with that is just keeping Embiid healthy. But if they fall, my concern is if that they fall too far below 500 here early, which I don't think they will. This is a what if to me, at least. They'll make desperation acts that they shouldn't make, is kind of what I'm trying to say here.
No, I understand that. I think there's a lot of examples or pieces of history in the NBA where you look at a team in April or March and it's like, this team's probably performing better than their record. Like, what happened that their record looks like this? And I think the Sixers could be a team like that where they're struggling through October and November and maybe even early December to get healthy. And their record, they might scrape above 500. And then it's like, now they're fighting once again in the play-in, and they have to fight a tough team in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think they should rush Embiid at all. Even if we fall to 1-6, I'm still not that concerned. I just want, if it gets any worse than that, then yeah, maybe throw him in there for a game or two. But as long as we get to about 500 by play-in time, that's all that matters.
Right.
And one of those teams you might be looking at, obviously, if you make it to the play-in tournament, assuming that you make it into the playoffs, you're either looking at the 1 or the 2 seed. Both of like we said, the 3 teams that we have to beat are the Knicks, Celtics, and the Cavaliers. All of them, really, except the Knicks so far, are looking really good. The Cavaliers are 4-0. Darius Garland had a very good game. I forget if it was a night ago or the night before. And the Celtics are just doing what they do. They're going to be a tough out no matter what. And really, the only thing that I can really see holding them back is injuries, and I wouldn't wish that on even Boston. So, going to be interesting night. Even I'm looking at it tomorrow. Cavaliers, Lakers, Celtics, Pacers. It'll be interesting test to see how good these teams really are. And like I said, just a really fun time of the year in the NBA as a whole. And for the Sixers, hopefully it can be fun and it won't be stressful.
Yeah. Just looking at the early standings, I think the Cavs and Knicks are going to end up flipping at some point in the year. I think the Cavs are going to fall off and the Knicks are going to take their spot because I don't believe in Darius Garland. I don't believe in Donovan Mitchell. I'm not really scared of either of those two. But the Knicks have Jalen Brunson, obviously, is proven playoff performer. They got Cat, obviously. They got McCall, who's kind of fallen off the earth a little bit. But OG, Cat, and Brunson scare me more than any Cav player.
The team that I'm looking at that we haven't talked about is the Magic. We just saw Bankero at 50.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 50. I mean, we saw what they did last year in the playoffs, so they didn't go too far, but they put up decent fights. They got definitely, I think the Orlando Magic, I mean, with Suggs and Bankero, and that's a tough team to beat come playoff time.
Absolutely, and they had a KCP over the offseason too, which I liked.
Right.
You're
Like you
forgetting,
said, they're sorry to cut you off.
It's all good. You're forgetting Wagner too, who gets a year better.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy contract for him though, which is something we haven't talked about. That contract he got over the offseason was something.
I mean, that's kind of That's standard. It didn't really shock me. That's what guys like him get now. Just the way
I know,
they
but like that's a lot of money. That's so much money for him. Didn't he not score a point in Game 7 against the Cavs?
He's like 21. What do you
I
want?
know. But regardless, that's a lot of money to hand out to a 21-year-old. Like,
Sure.
But yeah, no, definitely the Magic. The Heat, I don't know about you guys. The Heat have been this way because they have had that crazy run where they made it to the finals and then fell flat against Denver. I don't see them like their peak to me is like maybe conference finals if they get a good route to it. I don't really think this team is doing too much this year just because nothing's changed. That's really where I'm at with the Heat. Nothing's changed, and unless like Tyler Hero takes a massive step up, excuse me. Like they have Bam, who's great. They have Jimmy, who's great, but aging, obviously. I'm not moved by this Heat team. I think this is maybe a first round exit. Just depends on where they fall seeding wise, but I don't see them making it to the conference finals or beyond that.
Yeah, no, this Heat team is purely just, I don't think they're a threat to the East, but they're a team you don't want to play in the first round. And it's as simple as that. That's a team that a lot of East teams are probably going to beat them, but it's going to be a tough, tiring first-round series. It's one that's going to go to 7. It's one that you're going to have to out-physical them to win. It's just kind of a nightmare situation for a 3 seed or a 2 seed to catch them as the 6 or 7 seed.
Absolutely. I mean, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, both aging. I think Adebayo is about 30 now. So I mean, this is an aging team, but we've seen what they can do in the playoffs, but it doesn't really translate to the regular season. So the regular season team, I'm not scared of the Heat in February, but come March, come April, come May, that's when, obviously, as we've seen over the years with the finals run they had, that's when they're scary. The question is, with an aging team that they have now, can they keep that up? Because as you said, Ethan, this is the same team. There's not many changes, so you can't count out Eric Spoelstra, but we'll see.
Yeah, they'll pull some guy from the G League and I'll average 15 a game. So we'll see. Obviously, like you said, their season, unlike many teams, but their season really starts, I guess you could say, in March and April. So just a team, I think you guys worded it the best. Just you're not moved by them in the regular season, but just both by like a pedigree factor and just an experience factor. It's not a team you want to play in the first round.
Absolutely.
Also, Bam is 27.
How about old friend Doc Rivers? What is it? 20? I want to say 28-32 since becoming the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 1-3, right down there with the Pistons right now. Doc Rivers just really finding a way to succeed outside of that 2008 championship with Boston, I think it was.
Yeah, you and I on the last podcast pretty much called it. You said it was going to be death by Damian Lillard, and that's what it was. So 6 for 7 from 3 from Dame, or 6 for 12 from 3 for Dame. He really found his stride in that second half, and he went on a stretch where he couldn't miss, and that's what put him away. So. Incredible.
Yeah, I'm not sweating the loss. We were very shorthanded. Maxey didn't have his best game. I don't know if it's just rust because obviously he didn't play in the Olympics like a lot of players did. I don't know if it's just rust like that or if it's just we've had too high expectations for him. Obviously, Gary Trent, like you said, had a very good game. I'm not too worried about it, especially with the performance he had last night. Obviously, he's not going to have 45 every night, but it shows that he's kind of back in that rhythm that you'll get throughout the NBA season. And as we get into November, as that stride starts to kick, and I'm confident he'll do fine. And the Bucks right now looking at a win against a hobbled Sixers team and then losses to the Bulls, Nets, and the Celtics. I'm not worried. We got handled, admittedly, by a not-so-great-looking Bucks team, but we were shorthanded. Maxey didn't have his best night. It's a completely new team. Maybe I'm a little too confident in the Sixers team, but I'm not worried about this loss at all. If it I think I will start to get a little bit worried. I don't know about you, Evan or Nate, if we struggle on this road trip, especially if Embiid and Maxey are healthy and we struggle. Embiid and Paul George are healthy on this road trip and we struggle. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to do fine on the road trip. So we're still feeling fine. It's October. It's not even Halloween yet. So much time in this season left. I'm trying to stay, optimistic on the Sixers team.
Yeah. No, especially from that Bucks game and the past two games, there were a lot of positives I was able to pull out from those games. The role players looked really nice. Caleb Martin, even Yubasale, Drummond looked great. Drummond I think he's got 3 double-doubles on the year, which is just perfect. He had 13 rebounds in that game one. That's obviously at devoid of saying it yet again, Drummond is the perfect complement to an Embiid roster because he fills the void when Embiid comes off the bench and he can step up into these starting roles when Embiid's out. And Drummond has just looked perfect. He's looked like he hasn't lost a step from a couple years ago.
Yeah, and as you were saying about how he's really filling his role, Drummond's, I think it's 13 rebounds right now, which is second in the league. He's averaging. So obviously he's known for that, but to be able to consistently over the past 4 games to be dominant on the boards, and we saw 17 boards this most recent game against Indiana. Just him being consistent for the past 4 games and making sure he's down low, it's really helped the Sixers.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Not about you guys. I was a little bit worried about Andre Drummond when that signing was first announced because obviously the idea of him in this Sixers team is great and it's worked out perfectly so far. But he didn't look amazing. I mean, he didn't look terrible. He didn't look great as a Chicago Bull. Obviously, a lot more pressure on him as a Bull because he had more starting time because Joel Embiid's not on the Bulls. But like you said, Nate, these role players have looked amazing. And, we're 1-2 because at the end of the day, they're role players for the stars who aren't starting right now. But Kelly Oubre has had a great start to the season offensive-wise. He's averaging 21 points a game. Obviously, he's not going to be – probably not. Maybe he does. I don't know. Averaging 21 a game right now. Drummond, Nate, you were on the spot. He's averaging 10 and 13 a night. Obviously, that'll go down as Embiid gets back into the lineup. But just it's looking like what it probably should look like with Embiid and Maxey. I keep saying Maxey. Embiid and Paul George not healthy. A lot of positives from the first couple games, like Nate said. It's just a matter of, all right, we've gotten our positives out of the way. We should beat the Pistons tonight. If we don't, I'm going to be – or not, it's not tonight. It's tomorrow. Is it tonight? I keep forgetting. I keep mixing it up with tomorrow. Pretty sure it's tomorrow.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Okay. But
you said that Drummond's stat line might fall off when Embiid comes back. I honestly think that it's not a guarantee. I think he could still average a double-double even backing up Embiid. I just think he's that dominant on the boards.
I could see it. I think the points will fall down, but
Maybe
the rebounds I could see staying at 13 because he's one of the best pure rebounding centers in basketball, and obviously a lot of that potential he had way earlier in his career just kind of went out the window because he's not great offensively, especially at the free throw line. But like you said, the best way to word is that he's the perfect guy for an Embiid system because he doesn't need to hit the free throws because we have Embiid, George, and Maxey who can hit their free throws and everything else.
I'm curious to see because we didn't see it at all in Drummond's last stint with us, to see if they put Embiid and Drummond on the floor together when Embiid's healthy. We haven't seen that before. I mean, having 2 bigs, obviously, but if we want to keep Embiid healthy, keep him away from down, keep him in the mid-range or whatever, don't put him down low, keeping Drummond down there, get the boards, outlet it to Maxey or George, whatever, then get Embiid and fast break, whatever you got to do. I think that we should really consider keeping Drummond and Embiid on the court together.
That'd be really fun to say. I'll say that.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I mean, who's getting a rebound against however tall Joel Embiid is? I think it's close to 7 foot, and then one of the best pure rebounders in basketball. Who's getting, just from the rebound standpoint, who is taking that from you?
That kind of worries me if they were to ever throw that out there, just because I feel like we've seen that with Reed and Embiid before, that just doesn't work in terms of your offense just becomes a little stagnant because now you have 2 guys aren't necessarily threats from beyond the arc, and that kind of scares me now.
All right, yeah, but like, what if you're up by like 20 against Charlotte?
I mean, sure. If you want to give it a chance against a really big lineup, I have no problem throwing it out there and seeing what happens. But a team like Milwaukee or Boston, I don't think that can work.
Yeah, Nick Nurse though. If you're up against 20 against Boston, just say forget it. Let's see what happens. Like, or not against Boston, excuse me, against Charlotte, not against Boston. But if that Charlotte game goes really well, man, just have fun with these lineups. I want to see what happens. What if we run? Yeah, I don't want to get too far into this, but let's. We got a new team. It'll be fun to see what happens. I want to see Nick Nurse get creative because we know he can. But that'd be a really fun idea. I know, I'm all for that. That'd be awesome.
I want to know your thoughts are on KJ Martin. I mean, we haven't seen much out of him lately, but do you think that down the line, because they said that the reason why we gave him like $8 million, whatever it was to trade him down the line toward the trade deadline? Do you think we're gonna end up doing that from what you've seen in the past few games?
I mean, I think he probably will end up in a trade, kind of along with McCain in a sense, that they just are going to look for a final piece for this team. KJ Martin, when they initially traded for him last year, was, in my mind, the biggest aspect of that trade other than the picks. It obviously ended up being Batum, but I love KJ because he's athletic. He's kind of like an Oubre in a sense, but he started these couple games and he just has not been getting a lot of playing time overall, which makes me a little worried. So.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And if he's not getting that time without Embiid and Paul George, I don't think he's going to, because he's going to end up getting just bumped down over time. That's just because you're not performing. I don't think he's going to get it when the two best players on the team are back. I think it makes the most sense for Dale Morey to involve him in a trade for a guy who will have an impact, whether that's just a smaller trade. Like we saw a lot at last year's trade deadline of just smaller trades for draft picks. Maybe that's just what he's going to end up being involved in. But unless something changes, I really don't see why not. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think KJ Martin has a lot of upside for teams, but he's just not. He's not getting utilized, or Nurse isn't utilizing him properly. I don't think we saw it all last year. I mean, it was a surprise, or it was big news if KJ Martin got in a game last year. So probably going to be a similar situation this year too.
And he's young too. He's like 21.
Right.
That's where a lot of his value will probably end up coming from for any team, really. 21-year-old who's got, I'd say he's got upside. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Very athletic player.
Personally, I don't know if I loved, and that's like, obviously this team is going to look a lot different. Like we're going to know a lot more about this team in the trade deadline, but as of right now, like if the trade deadline was tomorrow, I'd say we'd keep him just because injuries can happen. We want to have like bench depth was the one thing that wouldn't not be talked about when the Sixers lost last year, and for good reason, because whatever the plus minus was with Embiid on and with Embiid off was just horrendous for any team, whether it be the playoffs or the regular season. So I'd like to see him stick around now, but like assuming the team is looking healthy, which hopefully it is by the trade deadline, I wouldn't be opposed to flipping him for some other guy who can fill his role and probably end up doing more for the team than he is, because he's just not doing anything.
Yeah,
the question is, what do we need? Sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're good. I mean, that's a fair question. I think that comes about later in the season when you actually evaluate what you need. Or, he could just be traded for, like, a pick or something. No, it doesn't have to be a thing.
Yeah, do we
haven't seen? Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Do we pick next draft? I don't know if we do.
We had a second rounder we got from someone at last year's trade deadline.
Yeah, but a first rounder.
First rounder, I don't think so. Let me check real quick.
No, we do. We have a pick next year, but I think it's only top 4 protected, so we'd have to be a really bad team to have our pick next year.
In 2025, hold up. Never mind, I didn't find it yet.
I think it's a pick that we gave to our Charlotte.
I think you're right. I'm just want to find it just so I'm 20. I'm not seeing anything for 2025. I'm seeing 2026. And oh wait, here it is. Here it is. We have one going to Oklahoma. It's top 6 protected, and there's a lot of asterisks to that. And okay, yeah, there's a lot of asterisks to that one. But
yeah, because I think they
NBA
traded
trades are weird.
They traded it with Charlotte, and it's like they only swap it if it's worse than Charlotte's pick. Like there's a lot of conditions to it.
Yeah, it becomes top 4 protected if it in 2026 if it doesn't convey in 2025, and then it's protected again in 2027 if it doesn't convey in either of them, and if it doesn't convey in 2025, 2026, or 2027, the Thunder get the Sixers 2027 second round pick.
So we don't have a pick.
Yeah, no. So unless everything goes wrong, or by some miracle this pick conveys in 2026 or 2027.
And next year's a pretty strong draft class. You guys are watching any college basketball, but
I'm not. I tried to get into it towards last year. It was too late in the season. That's where I was at.
no, next year's definitely a
Cooper Flag. I know he's going to be a member of the Thunder probably, which sucks. But
that better not happen.
if Cooper Flag goes to the Thunder, I think I might just stop watching basketball. I love the Thunder, but like
I don't think he will.
I hope he doesn't. I hope the Clippers can hold their own a little bit.
The Clippers are not going to be a lottery.
It'd be so funny though. It'd be so funny. Steve Ballmer buys this however $1 billion arena, and Cooper Flag goes to OKC on his back.
I don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it, but it'd be so funny.
Just keep it out the East. That's all I care about. Keep it out the East.
Speaking of the Clippers, have you guys seen those reports that have came out about a former Clippers snapper and Kawhi Leonard's injury?
Yeah, I saw that.
This has been insane. This is like the one thing that's been bothering me for like at this point like 2 weeks. So if you haven't heard about it, a former Clippers trainer, I believe they were, claims that they were fired because the original timeline for Kawhi Leonard's return on his injury was, I forget what it was. It was like 7. I want to say like around a year. What it was. There was a specific month's time on it, I think. It's escaping me right now, but it was really long, like bad. And apparently, like Steve Ballmer and the ownership just thought that could not happen. So the rumor is that the picture of him in Costa Rica was because they sent him to Costa Rica to get some surgery, and it didn't work, and that's why he got shut down. And like this Clipper staffer is going to sue them for however millions of dollars because he tried to warn them that like this surgery isn't going to work. This could just all be wrong because I haven't read into it. I just read it on like surface level, but absolutely insane.
Yeah, you got the story right. I mean, when I saw the Shams tweet, is like he's suing for wrongful termination because the Clippers were doing like illegal and detrimental surgery to Kawhi's knee. And my first question was, what's an illegal surgery?
Yeah.
Like, what were they doing to his knee? I'm like, this is a very interesting sort of storyline, and I'm sure there are other teams in the NBA that deal with similar things that are doing illegal practices like this.
I have a comment on it. There's nothing to say. I mean, but they sent him to Costa Rica. That's what the rumor is. Well, I know I saw that picture from Costa Rica, but they're saying it's because he got surgery.
That could be wrong, but that's like the conclusion people are drawing because like whatever kind of surgery it was is apparently done in Costa Rica. He could have just been in Costa Rica, and that could just be a hilarious coincidence. But like I said, I didn't read into it too far past like the Shams tweet and like not that much afterwards. But if this is true, what a black eye on like what was supposed to be a really fun start to the year for the Clippers, despite Kawhi being out. New stadium, Intuit Dome, really cool. You sent Kawhi to Costa Rica. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I didn't read that much into it. It's just an insane situation.
I'm gonna fact check myself real quick.
They're probably. I mean, if they. I wonder if the NBA gets involved with it, because I know it's the former employees suing, but if the NBA does their own investigation, the Clippers could start getting docked some picks, or incur some major fines, which would be.
What picks?
That's a good question. You're dipping into like 2032 or 2033.
Yeah, you can't go much lower than they already have. Oh wait, I have it pulled up. So, per ESPN, a former LA Clippers strength and conditioning coach who was hired in 2019 as a part of a years-long campaign to recruit Kawhi Leonard has sued the team and their president of basketball operations, alleging wrongful termination in part for raising concerns about the management of his injuries. And it leapt, in his own words, well beyond the bounds of NBA constitution. This is, how does this happen? Like, how do you get caught? Because like you said, Nate, every team does it, whether it be football, basketball, hockey, especially hockey, or baseball. Every team does it. Like, when Mahomes got injured a couple years ago, they were pumping him with painkillers. Obviously, that is 100. They probably pumped Embiid with painkillers. Like, how does it go so wrong that, like, you're being sued for an undisclosed amount of money? Kawhi Leonard could be out for the year. There's a outside chance, but a chance that your draft pick becomes this generational prospect out of Duke. Like, imagine telling this to a Clippers fan even a year ago, like after they traded for James Harden.
Or you tell it to them, like you say in what was the summer of 2019 that, hey, you get Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but in 4 years all this happens.
Yeah, even back then, I feel horrible. Kind of. Not for James Harden, but for the fans of that team, they deserve better at some point. This is like the third super team in their team's history that has collapsed without even. I mean, you had Lob City. I don't remember any of it because I was way too young. But every time this team has tried, it has gone horribly wrong. And interestingly, both times they've had something to do with the owner doing something dumb or saying something dumb. It's just shocking ineptitude. It's going to make an amazing 30 for 30 in 10 to 15 years.
Just send him to Vegas at this point.
Yeah, put him in Vegas. We'll just bring the Intuit Dome there, too. Technology is moving fast. Hold up. Oh, this goes all the way back to 2017. Okay, we're getting way carried off the... Oh, Evan just disappeared. Oh, he's back. This goes way back, but I don't want to get too carried off the Sixers, so we're at the 38-minute mark. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add, but I think, as for me, I'm just about ready to pack things up. World Series is on in a couple minutes. Anything you guys want to add before we go?
No, I'm just got to win these games against Detroit and Memphis, and hopefully Embiid's back before the road trip. That's it.
Yeah, for sure.
Stop losing games you should win. Beat the Raptors. That's all.
Feels like it's last year again when you're saying that. Feels like, or the year before, but trying to remain optimistic about this Sixers team. But thank you so much for tuning in to the fourth episode of the Sixers Fastbreak podcast. I am Ethan. That was Evan and Nate. We will be back next week when we have played. Well, we'll be in the middle of the road trip at that point, right?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great day or night.
Or not.